going to start this round. And John Duffy, we'll start with you. Special development zones were created around most of the red line stations when they went in, and since then, mixed-use development has been hardly promising around the rail. Why should Austinites pay hundreds of millions for future rail plans in light of the current situation?
Could you repeat the first part of that?
Sorry. Special development zones were created around most of the red line stations, and since then, development's been pretty sparse around those areas. So why should Austinites pay hundreds of millions for future rail plans in light of the current situation?
That question is built into it that we should. What the interesting thing about rail, and this is coming up from Chicago, and they have fairly successful rail program there, not financially, but one that people use. And the thing is, the city developed around track. They didn't lay track and then try to develop after that. And that's the problem. You can't just assume that something's going to develop along a fixed route. Now, is there an argument to be made that in some point in the future, 10 years from now, perhaps, where the cost of gasoline or diesel will be so high that people will then start developing there? There might be an argument to be made there. I'm not certain I have the definitive answer on that, though.
John, Rubine?
I think that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. I don't think Austin should. If there are people in our leadership who want to make assumptions and want to build a vision, depending on certain generalities and ideas about what they think is good for us, well, good for them, but I just don't want to pay for it. The if you build it, they will come strategy has not worked for rail in Austin. And maybe it will and maybe it won't. But I think if you look at it in a more general sense with regards to public transportation, when gas gets expensive enough, and it will, and when traffic gets bad enough, and it will, then people will call out for alternative modes of transportation, and Cab Metro will be there. We keep it lean and mean until that happens.
Tina?
This is a market issue. This is not a government-created demand issue, which is what's been set forward currently. If the market demands a certain activity, then the market will react to that activity. Spending hundreds of millions of dollars on experimenting to see if this is going to be a fruition that we should follow through on is not a good fiduciary use of the city's budgetary resources, as limited as they are. Again, so I'm a big fan of a small business proponent, high-tech CEO. If the market demands something, then we should react to that. We should not experiment with taxpayer dollars.
But some might argue that the way traffic situation is currently on I-35 and other corridors, that there clearly is a demand for some alternative.
There is, and although I would love to make wave a magic wand, we have three strong issues that impact our traffic. One is we have two highways that go in the exact same direction. One we lovingly call the loop. And two, we have rivers, and there's really just limited amount of things that we're going to be able to do to circumvent traffic from north to south Austin. The inherent lack of planning is what has left us in the position that we're in, with that if you don't build it, they won't come. But this is a market issue. We can't force $100 million on a rail system that the city is definitely divided on. That the city, I'm sorry, I'm not paying attention to the red and blue.
We relate on it.
Okay.
Mr. Spelman?
I think you get more development on a train which goes from where people are to where they want to go than the train doesn't. The red line was clearly built for convenience purposes. We already had a track. It didn't particularly go where people were. It didn't particularly go where people wanted to go. We already had a track, so we decided to do it anyway. Therefore, I'm not on. You're on it. Okay. Should I start?
Yes.
I guess. If you want me to start?
We can hear you better.
Okay. If you've got a train which goes from where people are to where they want to go, I think you can reasonably expect there to be relatively rapid redevelopment along that train. We don't have a proposal right now for a train system that really makes very much sense, but I think when we get one, and we had one I think in 2000, I argued strenuously for the Green Line in 2000, I think that's the sort of one where we would get rapid redevelopment. We are, however, getting development slower than expected, but we are still getting development even along the Red Line, which was not a particularly intelligent place to put a train. The Federal Light Track is developing, Plaza Saltillo is developing slowly, Crestview Station is developing a little bit more rapidly. I think even if you build a train system that people don't really need, people will start to figure out a way to need it because we have thousands of the city. If you don't, then you have to go to vote for it.
Mr. Chavez?
The short answer is we shouldn't spend a dime on any more rail. The lack of development around the current rail system, the Leander Red Line, is just one of the many broken promises that Cap Metro is thrust upon this community. First, they promised the feds would pay for half of it. Not only did the feds not pay for half of it, we didn't even bother to apply for federal funds after the election. It went over budget, went over time. In terms of the $100 billion investment that we're talking about for urban rail, both Detroit, Michigan, and Nashville, Tennessee, within literally weeks of each other, abandoned their urban rail transit planning because they came to the same conclusion in two different parts of the country. One, not only could they not afford the capital expenditure, but two, they had no idea and no way to measure what the long-term operational costs would do. Second, Portland, Oregon, which is considered the utopia for transit, this fiscal year is going to have a $16 billion budget deficit because of their rail system that's going to result in cuts to services and increases in fares for bus riders, which are the folks that we need to serve most with mass transit. You want an alternative? It's called bus rapid transit, which can be produced for literally nickels and dimes on the dollar.
As some of you may be aware, the city's demographics are changing, and the most rapidly growing demographic is mine, people over 60. The question, Dr. Spelman, I'll start with you. Is the city prepared for this, what one of your colleagues at the OBJ school called the silver tsunami? And if so, what can be done to improve that planning? If not, why not?
As you know, Arnold, the mayor has appointed a task force to consider the problems associated with the increase in the senior population. I'm not yet in your demographic, but I am approaching it fairly rapidly, and I hope to get there at some point. I think we all need to be prepared for the fact that all of us are getting older, baby boomers are getting older particularly, and that we're going to be a very different city, particularly from an economic point of view, in 10 years than we are right now.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Cannon, is in your estimation, is the city prepared for this changing for its changing demographic, and if not, what should it do to prepare itself?
I can't wait to get to 60, but I'll stay at 29. I don't think that we're prepared for it. I don't think we're prepared for it on an affordability housing issue, nor do I think we're prepared for it on transportation and mobility issues. Not to say that everybody over 60 is going to have mobility issues, but those definitely do arise. As it stands right now, it's difficult to get to bus stops when you're fully able and 29 years old like myself. Competition's around a little bit. And so I don't think that we're prepared for it on those two fronts, and those are important fronts that will impact the senior lifestyle here in Austin on a daily basis. From mobility to affordable housing, those issues have not been addressed by the city. We do a great job of having a youthful and energetic and vibrant city, and that's great, but we're not doing what we need to do to affect mobility and transportation for those who are disabled and those who are elderly.
Mr. Rubine?
What we need to do is democratize development, and I'll tell you why. Because as people age, they're going to have their cars taken away from them, like they should have took my grandfather's car away 10 years before they did. And they're going to need places near where they live to handle their daily affairs. All right? So if somebody wants to go to do something, they shouldn't have to get in their car and drive miles and miles. There should be something near everybody to handle their business. We're not keeping our cost of living, our fixed cost of living, the electric rates, they're going to go up. Property taxes are going up. That's not going to affect seniors to a certain degree, but it's going to affect their families, and it's going to drive people out of neighborhoods that they've grown up with. We're not prepared. We've got to keep affordability going, and we've got to get mobility going. Thank you very much.
Duffy?
I don't even think this is a problem we're prepared for nationally, let alone locally. What Mr. Rubine is saying is absolutely correct, and that we need more viable neighborhoods. When we plan on density development, having pretty much a city of commuting to one central location, that's not neighborhood viability. And as people age and lose mobility, whether their ability to drive or even their physical mobility, they do need a more viable neighborhood they can live in where they have well as trying to maintain low property tax rates by keeping spending low in the city.
Mr. Chavez, please.
Absolutely, we are not ready for the silver tsunami, but let me tell you about another demographic trend that's going to complicate it even more. 60% of AISD today is Latino Hispanic. We only graduate about 7 out of every 10 Latino Hispanics out of our high schools. In some East Austin high schools, we only graduate about 5 out of every 10. If we're really going to solve the silver tsunami crisis, it's going to require a strong workforce, a strong economic development policy. We've got to improve education for our young people, particularly amongst Hispanics and African Americans, particularly given that demographic trend that I just described. That's why I've been talking about since this campaign began, about making the city council take a stronger leadership role in education and workforce development and coordinating with the ISD, Austin Community College, our local universities, to strengthen our future workforce. Because if we're going to support the senior population, we've got to have a strong workforce, a strong economy to create that tax base that's going to require the type of investment that we're going to need to do that.
If I can, 30 seconds to that responsible education as a council member. Exactly. Not pie in the sky theory. Exactly. How are you going to do that as a council member?
Very simply, all we need to do is look 70 miles to our south where Mayor Castro is doing with the Brain, I think it's the Brain Trust Initiative or Brain Power Initiative, where he is literally unifying the local school districts, Alamo community colleges, UTSA, the business community, basically rallying the community to say the number one issue for this community going forward, because of our demographics and because of how we need to compete globally, is education. It can be done. It's going to take leadership, and I think what we can do as a city council is working with those jurisdictions, is create a strategic plan on what goals we're trying to achieve with our workforce and then direct those entities to do it.
Okay, I'm going to start with Councilmember Spelman here, and we'll just work our way left to right. I'm going to ask the same question again because the response is it's not your problem. That made no sense whatsoever. And that is, it's back to a corporate incentive explanation. It would be much appreciated if you could break this down in terms of the average person driving down Mopac. Exactly, Councilmember Spelman, whether it's the Apple deal or the next one that comes along, exactly how does the person driving down the road realize a net gain from corporate incentives? If the response is none, then be prepared in 30 seconds or less to say, as a member of the council, I wouldn't do another one. Go ahead.
Thank you for that question.
You're welcome.
The city issues any kind of incentive deal when it prepares to consider any incentive deal. We always make sure two things. What's it going to cost us and what's going to bring us back? The only incentive deals that have been brought before the city council that I've seen are those which bring back more money than we send out. The Apple deal, yes, we're going to be paying about $8.6 million over a 14-year period, but they will be bringing back in terms of higher taxes, fees, and electric rates, $14.5 million over that same period. That's money which we can use to reduce our tax rates downstream or to improve services for all of us.
But in measuring that, can you tell Austin taxpayers that their taxes are going down and their services are being improved?
I'm not sure I understand what you
Well,
mean.
that was your response, is that our tax rate is going to go down. Did you not say that?
Apple is putting 3,600 people to work over that 14-year period. Those are people who would be underemployed, less well-employed, or unemployed in the absence of those jobs. That's more money in the economy. That's more money they're spending.
Well, that's assuming that they are. That's assuming that they're picking up unemployed people currently in Austin.
Sure, if you have more jobs in town, you got unemployed people. We're the first people you're going to hire.
All right, do it again. If I'm driving down Mopac and I'm thinking about my monthly cost of living, and I think Councilmember Spelman and the others told me that this Apple deal is going to make my life better financially.
Yes, sir.
Tell me exactly how my life financially is better.
The city will be able to either reduce your taxes by $14.5 million over the course of the next 14 years, or increase the services available, because we will have more money available in city government than we otherwise would. The city will be $14.5 million better off as a result of this deal.
In theory, then my taxes should be going down.
Either your taxes are going down, your services are going up, or a combination of the two, and that's largely up to you, sir.
Has that happened?
Well, we haven't made the deal yet, but when the deal is made over the next 14 years, we will see more money coming into city government, and we'll have that opportunity.
So
minute or less responses left to right to my hopefully pointed question about the driver on back history.
I didn't speak against the Apple deal personally at City Council. I mean, I took the 3 minutes I was allowed to outline why the Apple deal would have been a bad deal. You know, if you bring, the cost of everything's going to go up anyway. So I mean, like, does that translate into actual increases in services, or just possibly not cutting something, or I don't know? It's real wishy-washy to say that that's necessarily going to make anything better for any individual. I mean, there's going to be, how people are going to come in who don't live here already and start driving on that moped, or using the water, or using the roads. You know, how much net drain is there on infrastructure that already exists that wasn't there before? That you're just going to use that money to then, you know, upkeep. I think it's really kind of hard to gauge specifically whether you could say there's a net positive benefit for any individual.
If you can't gauge it, would you be in favor of doing it, yes or no?
Absolutely not.
Okay, next.
Well, I can gauge it, all right? I live down South Austin. There'll be no benefit to our services because we're not getting the benefit of the services we're paying for right now. Nobody who's earning all that money in those tech jobs is moving down to where I live or sending their kids to my neighborhood schools. Council people aren't coming out there and walking my block, okay? So what do we have left? We've got people sitting around their dinner table, and all they want to do is butter their bread and think everybody's doing the right thing by them. They don't feel that way. In an economic climate that we have now, they're paying millions to corporations to move here and make billions. And what's so wrong with Austin that we got to pay them some of the millions of dollars to move here? We're doing them a favor because it's going to improve their quality of life.
Have y'all been to Round Rock? It's a little company up there called Dell. I think Round Rock has done well as a result of the impact that Dell's had on their economy, both in the company itself and the small businesses that have built up around that company to support both the company, the employees, as well as new homes and new home builders in those areas. Economic development done with this Apple deal. If I were on council, I would have voted 6-0 right alongside with everybody else. This is an economic deal that has some very stringent requirements for Apple to meet in order to rebate $807,000 annually. Everybody keeps talking about the $8.7 billion. When you break it down to an annual level versus what we're getting back in payroll, and where does that money go to payroll? Where do you pay for your things? What do you do with your payroll? Right? You buy things. You pay your taxes. You buy your house. You buy your car. You buy big ticket items. This is money that translates right back into the Austin economy. As a high-tech CEO, I watch on a daily basis our talented engineers and developers go west. These are the talent pool that we're losing here in Austin because we don't have magnet companies like the Apples that bring in other magnet companies.
To use your economic theory then, that it gets sort of trickles down, this money circulates, right? Is that your theory that it circulates around the marketplace? Then sooner or later, the people sitting here would have a net benefit. I mean, somehow they would realize a net benefit. What is it?
Certainly, if you're looking at just payroll alone, the average developer coming out of college right now is making $40,000 a year. These are $63,000 a year jobs coming in Apple. These are great paying jobs and they're quality Austinites here in Austin.
It's never happened, Jeff. We've been doing these deals for a while. Let me ask anyone in the audience, has your tax bill gone down? Okay. Next question is, what about services? Last I checked last budget, we had to close neighborhood pools. We had to shut down libraries for certain days of the week. So this has never happened. So you have to admit one or two things. Either these deals don't work, or we've been so reckless with our spending, all that new money we're getting, we're not doing a good job managing. I don't oppose these deals, but Bill missed one key criteria. Does the company need these funds to actually relocate and build here? Do they actually need it to their bottom line? And the question with Apple is, I think most people look at that and it doesn't pass the smell test. It's $100 billion, the largest non-financial company in the world. The question is, did they need money from the city of Austin to expand their existing facilities? And the answer I think most people will come to is, no, they didn't. And that should be a key factor when we make these decisions.
Councilmember Spelman is bobbing his head, so I'll give him 30 seconds to respond.
I missed the most important one, Jeff. If you're driving down Mopac and you're working at Dell, the chances are really good that you would not be working at Dell had we not done this deal. I don't know whether Apple needs the money or doesn't. I suspect strongly it doesn't, but that's not the critical question. If you got $100 billion in the bank, you're one of the most successful companies in the world, you can go wherever you want to. They want to come here, they can come here. They want to go back to Phoenix or try again, or go to Omaha or Des Moines or any place else they want to.
Have you never heard of that? Okay, let's talk a little bit about Austin Energy, Mr. Spelman. I'll start with you just because this is a current issue with the current council. A lot of folks have been talking a lot about Austin Energy paying 9.1% of its revenues to Austin's general fund. Is that a wise use of taxpayer money? And if not, what else should be done to help keep costs for Austin Energy down so that our rates don't go up by so much?
The city of Austin has a municipally owned utility. That means all of us collectively own our electric utility. If we did not collectively own the utility, then an investor-owned utility would be providing us with electric services instead. If an IOU, an investor-owned utility, were providing us with electric service, it would still be paying dividends, it would still be retaining some earnings, it would be putting it in the bank for themselves the same way that Austin Energy retains earnings and issues a dividend. Dividend for Austin Energy is in the form of a transfer to the general fund, which reduces our need for sales taxes and property taxes and other fees to pay for all the things that we pay for out of the general fund. So one way we have to keep our property taxes low is taking money out of Austin Energy in lieu of a dividend. If we had not invested in a utility, those dividend funds would be going to shareholders all over the country and all over the world that we wouldn't have a benefit of. So I think the key value for Austin Energy for all of us is that 9.1%, which is roughly consistent with the amount of the dividend payment that would be going outside of our economy if we're an investor in utility.
Mr. Chavez?
I think the problem with the Austin Energy crisis is we have the fox guarding the hen house. It's not a question of is it the right dividend or not the right or wrong dividend. I mean, that's a question that has to be had. The question is, should the city council be making that decision, then hitting the gavel and saying to just balance the budget? Because then they never have to make tough budget choices. What I'm suggesting is, this is a publicly owned utility company. We should enjoy the benefits of it. But when times are bad at the utility company, when the budget's not being balanced, when we're spending out of control, we need to control that, and we need to tell the city council that we should not be transferring that much amount of money each and every year. The only way you do that is to have a truly independent board of directors appointed by the city council, but can make decisions on the financial management of the utility company. It can also make decisions about what the appropriate dividend is. Private corporations do that every single day. We should not let politicians be making those types of decisions about our public utility, because that's creating the crisis that we're currently in.
Ms. Cannon?
I like Don's idea of that, and that comes from my audit background. There's a little thing in the audit book called separation of duties. Those who are looking to balance the budget should not have direct access to deciding the rates for utility payers. However, the bigger issue is that I think we've gotten to this stage because for 17 years, right, we've gone without any kind of leadership and any foresight to say that, could energy rates possibly be going up? Should we as a council be doing something about that proactively? No. So they passed the buck for 17 years in a row, and now that's why we're in the quote-unquote crisis we're in. If you heard the mayor talk earlier, we have some very competitive market rates for energy. The problem is that we've waited so long to have a reaction. Now it's going to be on the backs of the lower income and nonprofits to absorb the lack of leadership that we've had on council and foresight.
Okay, so you've got a publicly owned utility. You pull $75 million out of that and put it in the general fund. That way you keep property taxes lower, but your utility rates go up. So that's a shenanigan, and that's a red herring, and basically it's backdoor tax, and it's no substitute for actual real fiscal discipline that nobody wants, but we need. We're going to have to make cost-benefit analysis decisions. I make them at the end of every month, and all my neighbors do as well. Also, when Austin Energy says this is what we need, I'd like to have that independently audited. I think the city auditor should hire an independent body to check it out and make sure that they're saying they need what they actually need and not what their highest hopes are.
Just so folks know, they are currently doing that, I believe, right, Mr. Spelman?
No, it needs to be an external company, not an internal company. An external company, a private contract, privately contracted audit.
We have an external auditor.
Hired by whom?
Through the usual selection.
Well, we can school me on that. I'm yelling.
Mr. Duffy?
term, the best way to keep some of our energy rates low will be to start using decentralized solar. And if we want to do that, we have all this money that is the profit that becomes the dividend of the publicly owned utility. That money should be used for future energy investments so we can maintain low energy rates into the future. You put decentralized solar all over Boston, and eventually your energy starts paying for itself. Eventually, it will take time. But if we have this money, we're pushing it over and spending it on things that have absolutely nothing to do with energy, that's not really doing anybody any good. So some long-term fiscal responsibility and some long-term sort of foresight on the energy front would be to start using the money that we currently generate buying fossil fuels, which, coal for the Fayette plant is not only damaging the environment, but it's shipped on the diesel train here from Wyoming. The price of diesel goes up, the price of energy is going to go up. It's always going to be affected. So let's use that energy money that we already have towards a secure and cheaper energy future.
Okay, we're going to go to the rapid fire questions. You're not going to get all of them, but you better because the sheer volume here. And please limit to yes, no. Mr. Duffy, should the Austin energy market be open to competition?
Possibly.
Possibly. Mr. Rubine?
No.
Yes.
Yeah. Dr. Spelman?
Absolutely not.
Mr. Chavez?
No, but if we don't fix things, we'll be forced to.
It's no but. Okay. Do you favor completing water treatment plant number 4 at its current location? Mr. Chavez, yes or no?
Yes, completed.
Yes. Dr. Spelman?
Yes.
Ms. Camp?
Yes, that should be said.
Mr. Rubine?
Yeah, it hurts to say it, but yes.
Yes, but.
Absolutely not. No.
No. Okay. Do you believe that Austin municipal salaries are competitive? Mr. Duffy, yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Rubine?
I trade places with him, yes.
Yes.
Mostly.
Yes.
Maybe one of the best answers I've ever heard.
I don't think we've asked it all tonight, it's probably a mistake. It would be yes, no, just go in order, single member districts. I think it's kind of it all, that's a mistake on our part, so.
You want to be specific about that question?
I mean, like how many districts?
Which plan?
Oh, boy. There goes the value of that question, right? I think the latest, Councilmember Spelman can speak to this. There's been ideas kicked around for many, many years, as we all know, but it was anywhere, so like 7 to 10?
6 times in a row it's been turned down.
Right, it's been turned down 6 times, but I think her question is, let's come up with an arbitrary number. Let's say 10 districts. All right? Single member districts. Sorry.
Indifferent.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, but I want to support what is most likely to pass this 7th time around.
I'm sorry. 7 districts. This will be 7 times.
7th time this will have gone before the
Right.
voters, and what I want to support is the thing which is most likely to pass.
So let's do it 10 times then.
Let's just have leadership one time and ask them 10
Well,
more.
that was kind of yes or no.
Yes, 10-1.
Thank you.
Okay, now I think we're going to give each of you 1 minute to give us your spiel, and it is a hard 1 minute. Mr. Duffy, we'll start with you.
People often talk about the amount of top 10 lists Austin is on and all the great things about Austin. And that's fantastic, but there was a time when Detroit was on all the top 10 lists in the country, and a lack of foresight and the idea that the good times would last forever, and the idea that the industry that did have in Detroit, that it would be, the icon of the world indefinitely, was faulty, and now look at Detroit. So if we look at ourselves, if the good times are always going to roll, and we just keep spending all the money that we have, and we never become a net saver as a city, and we never start actually having a budget surplus, now is not on those top 10 lists anymore. So we need to start thinking long-term, not just about development, not just about big sexy contracts with these great global companies, but making a viable, sustainable city out of Austin.
You can throw adjectives around all week long about Austin. Everybody's got a different idea of what Austin is and what Austin should be. But only 7% of registered voters voted in the last election. So a vibrant democracy, Austin does not have. We deserve better than that. We can do better than that. We can. You just have to try to think about it like someone that would be wanting to do it. Because right now, no one's voting. They think it's a rigged game, and for all I know, they may be right. We won't find out until we can take a fair shot at trying to increase voter turnout. Thank you.
I spent a lifetime in the business sector as an auditor, financial planner, financial examiner for the Certified Fraud Examiners Association. I've been a high-tech CEO for 4 different tech companies here in town, as well as published a magazine that highlights and supports locally owned businesses. I am a numbers girl. I am a metrics girl. I am about being fiscally responsible for our city's budget of nearly $3 billion. I train and educate other female entrepreneurs down at Texas State University on how to build scalable businesses, on how to take their business to the next level of profitability. I started my career as an EMT, so I have a wide range of flexibility, understanding that there are social needs and that there are business needs, and as well as there are environmental needs here in Austin. I think that we can balance those, but I think it's high time that we left lectures in the classroom and put leadership on the council.
I'm Bill Spelman. In addition to being a member of the Austin City Council, I have since 1988 been a member of the faculty of the LBJ School at the University of Texas, where I taught a whole bunch of different classes, which are way too detailed to merit consideration now. I'm running for City Council in part because I have a bunch of students who keep sending me postcards and giving me phone calls talking about how much fun they're having actually making policy. And I went to graduate school at Harvard to learn how to make policy, not to teach other people to make policy. I'm also running because I grew up in Los Angeles, and I know what happens when you let a city run by remote control. When you have people living further and further out because you're not paying attention to your urban neighborhoods and helping the development community to infill, to help create complete neighborhoods, to help defeat sprawl and give people more and more choices as to where it is that they're going to live. I know what happened in Los Angeles. I can hardly go back there now because the small traffic congestion and the costs are so incredibly high. We can avoid making those decisions when we keep Austin weird from a sunny pool sloping into a method of surviving as a vibrant city for the future.
My name is Chavez. I'm running for Place 5 City Council, and I appreciate your support. You'll hear politicians tell you all the time this is the most important election. Well, I truly believe this is one of the most important elections. We are now 800,000 people in this community, over 1 million in our metropolis, yet we still are governed by 7 people who live within 4 zip codes. This election is the first step towards fundamentally changing the way our city is governed, to break it away from special interests and to put it back in the interests of citizens. I'm supporting the 10-1 plan because I believe it's time the city reflects its size, diversity, and complexity of issues. I live in far South Austin. We are not like Hyde Park. We are not like Northwest Hills. We are not like East Austin. Each and every one of those parts of the city deserves to have a representative. It's a very simple function of government. Who do I call when I have a problem? At this point in far South Austin, I don't know who to call unless I've got a personal relationship. If you re-elect this incumbent, you heard his message, he's going to look at it, and that means he's going to keep the status quo. I'm for 10-1, and I hope you have your support coming May 12th.